Hey guys, it's me, Little Al, back again with another reaction, and we are here to... Just kidding! Oh my... Just kidding. Yep, that laugh there. See, that laugh would have been completely absent for this video. If I did that face the entire way through, I'd be like, ha 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 ha. No, you want me slapping my knee, and you want me laughing at stuff that really isn't funny at all, but it provides an entertaining reaction, so it's kind of fun. I'm Little Al. Nice to meet you. Yes, we do crazy stuff on this channel, and this video in particular is a bit of a wild card. So it is the the video itself is called Real Life Snowpiercer, aka the insane giant Nazi railway, the Breitspurbahn. Yes, I did do German GCSE. Have you noticed? Thank you very much for asking. Like I said, yeah, but it does involve trains, so there is a element of relevance to this reaction, certainly. I think it'd be really interesting. Because something I don't really talk about on this channel. I am a bit of a history buff. I do love myself a bit of history. That whole idea, especially considering that whole idea of fact is stranger than fiction. I've always loved that. Just especially considering I'm a drama student, so I'm majorly like a creator of fiction. But I say creator of fiction. I'm not. Anyway, I'm rambling, guys. I do ramble a lot during these videos. So but yeah, like I said, I'm Little Al. Have you met me yet? But yeah, this should be, like I said, interesting, a bit of a weird, but definitely a very interesting one, this should be. So, drop the video a like if you enjoy content like this, and subscribe to the channel too. And let's get going. Let's get going.
Adolf Hitler had a huge obsession with engineering projects that were, for the most part, bonkers. A mighty railway that would connect distant corners of the known world
looks like a Russian design.
An empire envisioned as the Great Third Reich, and change the way we travel. Pounding the steel rails from Lisbon to Moscow would be trains of staggering proportions.
Jesus.
6 meters wide with luxury apartments, cinemas, swimming pools, dog kennels, and of course 20mm anti-aircraft cannons, whisking passengers
Swimming
and troops
pools on a
away
train.
to far-off lands. Hitler's mega railway might have been called too ambitious by his own engineers, but was surprisingly closer to operation than you might think, even during World War II. So let's all jump aboard and ride the incredible and insane Breitspurbahn.
That's such a satisfying word, Breitspurbahn. Like I will admit, you probably will hear me mumbling German sayings under my breath, because it's such a satisfying language to speak German. It's some of the words just are so satisfying. So prepare yourself for that.
Nothing was too big in scale or too implausible in execution for what the Fuhrer dreamt up, whatever the scheme that caught his feverish fancy. For vast empire, you need a vast transport solution. The Breitspurbahn, which translates the German as broad gauge railway, was one such mega infrastructure.
That was the Great Western Railway had broad gauge. They had There was a gauge between there was like this thing called the gauge wars between like broad gauge and standard gauge. So if you've ever been to the York History Museum, like Grand Duke, I think it's called Grand Duke, but that is a replica of one of the original that is a replica of one of the original broad gauge engines. So like you can see they're kind of that. So they stole this off the Great Western Railway. I'm just saying. Duck is pissed right now.
Project. Epic is the first word that comes to mind when thinking of the immersive scale of what was to be a railway network that would crisscross Europe and beyond.
I love it.
Initial lines for the railway system were to be between the German cities of Hamburg, Berlin, Nuremberg, Munich, and Linz. Other, grander proposed routes were something of a lesson in European geography. For example, the east-west route would be between Rostov in Russia and Paris, and included stops in Kiev, Ukraine,
I think that's
and
Monday,
Krakow,
Bulgaria,
Poland,
Rostov.
as well as Berlin. Or take the north-southeast route, which would be between Hamburg and Istanbul, taking in major European capitals such as Vienna, Budapest, and Belgrade along the way. Other routes included those between Dresden in eastern Germany and Rome, and that between Munich and Madrid. Even more exotic routes that were touted early on in the project included far-flung destinations such as India and Vladivostok in Russia's Pacific Far East, with maybe even perhaps a direct route into Alaska, Canada, and beyond. One thing to note was that all these routes had one thing in common: the assumption that all destinations would be under the direct or proxy control of Nazi Germany.
But that's not the only problem I'm getting from this. Jesus Christ, have you, I've heard of ambition. There's ambition, and then there's that.
Such a radical rethink of European borders, it requires a radical rethink of train design. There were no less than 41 different designs for the locomotive offered by companies involved in the project.
Also, I love the narrator for this. Just the Australian accent just really fits this for some reason. I don't know why.
Classical steam locomotives, as well as gas turbine electric, diesel hydraulic, and electric locomotives were all considered, with power outputs ranging from 15,000 to 24,000 horsepower. It was finally decided that locomotives for passenger trains would be mainly electric and diesel hydraulic powered, whilst locomotives used to transport freight would be primarily conventional steam engined. High-performance locomotives would be needed for passenger trains so that they could haul 8-axle double-decker carriages that would have staggering measurements. They would be 42 meters long, 6 meters wide, and 7 meters high.
I'm just speechless.
The passenger carriages would have Dutch doors.
It's an insight into Hitler's mind. How delusional must you be to think that there could be an actual project, and the fact that it actually nearly went ahead.
That featured retractable staircases. Luxurious facilities and unique features would be the hallmark of this train design. Proposed concepts would include carriages with large.
I love the German eagle on the front there. Call me. I'm not becoming a Nazi, just seeing that. I'm not becoming a patriotic Nazi from seeing that, but it's so cool. I don't know.
Rooms, bars, and lounges.
I think they still use the eagle as a symbol, Germany. If you I don't really know. I think it's their national animal, I think, the eagle.
Promenade and observation decks. Trains would further feature 196-seat cinemas, a barber shop, a sauna, and even a swimming pool, offering an array and type of facilities and luxury never seen before on any mass passenger train. The mail and baggage cars could transport up to 8 motor cars, and importantly for military convoys, include enough space for multiple 20mm anti-aircraft guns, ammunition storage, and gun crews. It was even envisioned that a large ship could be hauled by the freight locomotive.
Okay, what the hell's going on? Realistically, okay, they can carry boats now, I suppose, small fishing boats, but I can't. I'm
The overall dimensions and scale of the train were truly awe-inspiring. Its total length.
I apologize if this is seeming like a bit of an overreaction, but I can't fathom how this could possibly be a thing.
Would be around about 500 meters with a capacity of 2,000 to 4,000 passengers. All of this would be achieved at impressive speeds.
I do love these random videos. They are fun.
250 kilometers per hour or 150 miles per hour for my American friends.
Whilst carrying all that,
to facilitate such a huge train, the tracks would need to be bigger still.
They need a whole
railway.
How strong would those bridges need to be? How strong those
as
need
the
to be.
gauge size or spacing between rails is everything. The railway was originally proposed to run on 4,000mm track, although it would be ultimately designed as a 3,000mm broad gauge
Bloody
railway.
hell.
That translated into a track with more than double the width of the standard gauge track.
That's pretty. That's very. I don't know why, I just find that very humorous. Thick rail. Oh, God.
Jeez.
That's so funny.
The project
I don't know.
involved a ballasts track which consisted of two parallel pre-stressed concrete walls embedded into the ground, joined at the top by a flat transverse concrete slab. The flexible rails would be placed on top. Interestingly, Hitler himself believed that the standard Stephenson gauge was obsolete and too narrow for the development of a modern railway network for the Reich. To clarify, the measurement of 1.4mm was first used in the UK in 1825 by railroad pioneer George Stephenson and became the agreed engineering standard in railways
That pronunciation.
across Europe, although some countries do have wider rails like Russia and Spain. There was also an ulterior motive for Hitler's insistence on a wider gauge. He wanted to ensure that the upgraded and expanded railways would be able to easily accommodate extensive convoys of military trains. This was a man hell-bent on waging war with the rest of Europe, don't forget.
Yep.
At the time of planning, Germany's railways had been badly affected by the brutal reparations bill that Germany had been saddled with as the losing aggressor at the conclusion of World War I, courtesy of the Treaty of Versailles. The Nazi-era Deutsche Reichsbahn, or German railways, was therefore personally tasked by Hitler with improving and rapidly expanding the country's track network and rolling stock. Nazi construction engineer Fritz Todt is central.
It's very disturbing imagery, like with the Nazi salutes and stuff, but you can't deny that it is iconic. Like, just we associate it now so much with evil, but it's something we'll never forget. Like, especially though probably most of the people that did witness it are dead now, but it's something that it will never be erased from world history. That's how iconic it is.
To the story of the railway and the concept of a much wider network. Todt rose rapidly in the Nazi ranks and was the man who oversaw the building of the country's highway or Autobahn network. Hitler, ever the man obsessed with all things grandiose, enthusiastically embraced Todt's ideas regarding the wide-gauge railway system. But other railway experts in Germany were not so enthusiastic about the project. They thought a new gauge, incompatible as it was with existing rail infrastructure in Germany and abroad, would be nothing but trouble. They also didn't see the need for such a vast railway system and proposed a less disruptive and compatible quadruple track standard gauge lines to be used instead. Hitler wasn't interested in their qualms, and what Hitler wanted, Hitler got. Hitler was even heard.
Well, clearly not, because this didn't get into development. So, up yours, Hitler.
That Germany's rails being too wide didn't matter, since the rest of Europe was going to be.
I'm just saying. If I said that on a German radio in 1942, I would die. Okay, this would be the last video. What I've just done. If that was the time then, you guys would never see me again.
Of Germany anyway, and so the project was greenlit. It would be an active project for the Nazis throughout World War II, comprising a staff complement of some 100 officials and 80 engineers, which, as you may know, was desperately needed by Germany for the war effort. So they had the trains, the track, the engineers were finally on board. Why did the project never leave the station?
So ambitious. Why do you think?
One cannot underestimate Hitler's obsession with the so-called Greater Germany, an expanded imperial Germany that would absorb all other European states conquered by the Nazis. The vision stated with the famous annexation of Austria in 1938 and ramped up with the invasion of Poland in 1939, the event that finally kicked off World War II. And it was this war that was quite obviously the demise of the project. Ultimately, like all other Nazi mega super duper projects, nothing came of this railway in the end. This was mostly because the Third Reich, which was supposed to last 1,000 years, only lasted 12.
Future Nick here. A quick but fascinating side note is that Hitler's visionary for this project,
Was that true? It was supposed to last 1,000 years.
Fritz Todt, died in a plane crash in East Prussia in 1942. He had been arguing with Hitler that the German economy could not sustain a war with Moscow, and it was better to end it peacefully as soon as possible, much to the rage of the Führer. But conspiracy pundits have said that the timing suggests Todt was negotiating a peace treaty between Russia and Germany without Hitler's permission and was assassinated before he could rally government support. Albert Speer, Todt's successor, was due on the same flight and would have died in the crash, but was delayed boarding by none other than Hitler himself. Very curious. He attempted to look into the crash, but was stonewalled by the Air Ministry, who refused to investigate, stating the possibility of sabotage is ruled out. Further measures are therefore neither requisite nor intended. I'll let you in the comments think about that one for yourself. There is little doubt that Hitler was inspired by Russia and their Trans-Siberian Railway network.
I was about to say, the design, yeah, I mentioned at the beginning, the design is very Russian.
Irony that it was Hitler's disastrous campaign to invade the Soviet Union that would mark the beginning of the end for Nazi Germany. At least the Russians actually had their immense railway, which still operates to this very day. That's more than could be said for the Nazis and their doomed railway fever dream. Speaking of fever dreams, if you enjoyed this video today, then I hope that you subscribe. And if you want to see more Found and Explained content, then jump onto our social media. You can see quick behind the scenes content and previews of upcoming episodes. But if you don't want to wait and you also want to support the channel, then we have Patreon and channel members. You get to see videos early, chat with me direct, and even suggest your own topics. So I'll leave a link down the bottom for you to see that. Anyway guys, I've got a train to catch.
That is insanity personified. That is ridiculous, just how ambitious that project is. But at the same time, it's an interesting insight into kind of who Hitler was as a person and the amount of power that he had over Nazi Germany. Yeah, this is kind of drawing away from the kind of train side of things, but definitely bringing out the history buff side of me. What Hitler, like, I think it was best put, like, in the actual video, what Hitler wants, Hitler got. And it's like with someone like as notorious and as historic and as historically infamous as Hitler, you must it's scary to imagine that kind of power in that man's hands, specifically in that guy's hands. It's just insane. Like a swimming pool on a train. I cannot fathom the, like, I would like to, can I tell you what, I do have a question for you guys in the comments. What would your reaction be, if this actually was a project and it was still around today? But, obviously, like, it probably wouldn't happen, obviously, probably, World War II probably wouldn't have gone the way of the Allies. We'd probably be under Nazi rule still to this day if that project did go ahead, and it was still around. But at the same time, I'm just thinking of something similar, like along the lines of this. Like, I'd like to say the Trans-Siberian Railway, but even that's just across one country. Granted, it's the biggest country in the world, but it's still one country. Like, just something, I'm talking about something like across Europe and even to parts of Asia. To freaking, like, it's insane to think about, and it kind of reminds me of that Milk Tank Media's series where he had Sir Robert Norrenby imagine a future where all of society was connected by trains, like a massive like super railway network. It's interesting. It's really interesting to think about, and I think it's definitely something. It's definitely a project that has its pros and cons. Like as we saw there, it's incredibly ambitious, and also as you like, Hitler made assumptions in regarding the project. Like it was really a way to connect this idea he had of a super Germany, which is basically world domination, effectively. That's effectively what that was. Yeah, a fascinating little video, and I hope you enjoyed this kind of spin on my reaction content, because I had fun. I had a lot of fun with this one. It was a bit difficult to kind of keep up with like the statistics and all, because I was just so blown away by it, by just how insane it all is. And so I don't know. Discuss in the comments kind of what would your reaction be if something like this did exist, like now. Yeah, this is Little Al speaking. Drop the video a like if you enjoy, subscribe to the channel too, and I'll see you guys next time.